Hello guys and welcome back for another Aeternum video. For those of you who are watching the channel and are following it, you probably know by now that I'm trying to be as efficient as I can be by providing you with good and quality information in the shortest time possible. Today, however, it will be a bit different and it will be in the form of a longer video simply because the topic that we have to discuss is a bit more complex. What we're gonna speak about will be the light attacks, the heavy attacks and the blocking in the game, with different tips and tricks how to make combos more efficient and better in terms of damage and chasing potential, and all those things have to take their time. Now please bear with me because there is a lot to discuss and I will try to go of course as quick as possible, but I just want to be sure that I will share everything that I know so far from my 4 years in New World, so you can also understand why this is so complex and why it's so important. The first thing to start with is that a lot of people that are joining the game, mostly new players and of course comers from different MMOs, think that the combat and in general the game mechanic of New World is really simple, but to be fair, that's not the case. They are really getting baited by the fact that we have only 3 abilities per weapon, and of course having 2 weapons, that's only a total of 6 abilities. So for many people coming from different MMOs, this feels like a super kids game because why it should be hard? It's only 6 abilities. But the truth of the matter is that there is a lot of other things in the background, and most of those things are, like I mentioned, the light, the heavy attacks, and of course the blocking in the game, because this is making the combat so complicated and so deep that it will take you probably hundreds of hours to master it, even maybe thousands. But anyway, let's jump first to the sections that we're gonna discuss today, because I want to split the video in different sections so we can know what we are talking about and of course to know all the specifics. The first section that we're gonna discuss will be the light attacks, what they are good for, what they are bad for, and of course when to use like non-stop our light attacks, or let's say when we should spam our light attacks, and when we should not do that, but instead we should combine them with different abilities or with dodges in between them. And I will of course give you some examples with different weapons so you can see what I'm of course talking about. The next big section that we're gonna discuss will be the heavy attacks, and again the same thing, we're gonna discuss when they are good to be used, when they are bad to be used, on which weapons of course, and when we should do half heavies and when we should do full heavies, but this is something that I will go into more details and specifics in a little bit. And then of course the third section, like I've mentioned already, it's gonna be the blocking. So blocking can be performed not only with shield, you can technically block with almost all of the weapons in the game. Many people don't really know that, but again I will explain that a little bit later. And same as the previous two, we will discuss when it's good to block, when it's bad to block, and when we should prioritize blocking over dodging and vice versa. So basically those are the core things from today's video, and I will also at the end try to give you some tips and tricks on how to, for example, extend your combo, or how to make it look smoother, and of course to increase your damage potential, and of course how to extend the range of your attacks, because there are certain things that can benefit your range of attack. But again, this is a trick that I will share with you at the end. So enjoy, and if you have any questions guys, as always, make sure to ask me. Now let's just get it started. Okay, so let's start with the first section for today, and that would be the light attacks. So what is a light attack in New World Aeternum? Basically, whenever you click your left mouse button or whatever button that might be on the console, you would perform an attack with your weapon that you are currently holding, and this will be a basic attack that is considered as light attack. Now of course, if you keep on pressing that same button, you would see that every weapon has a different attack pattern. As you can see, I'm currently holding a sword and a shield, and I'm doing 3 unique attacks, which are swing, swing into a small spin. Now if I change the weapon and I go for example to rapier and I keep on clicking, you would see that the pattern of course is different, and here we even have 4 attacks instead of the 3. If I change again the weapon to, let's say, spear, you would see that the pattern will change again, and this time it would not be 3 or 4, it will be just 2. This goes for every single weapon out there, Every single weapon has its own unique pattern of attacks, and of course they do different types of damage and different amounts of damage. Now, if we want to know more about those attacks, we can always go to the weapon mastery section where we can see all of the different weapons, but instead of navigating into a specific one, we can just hover with our mouse over a specific weapon that we want to see, and we can read the details for it. For example, we are currently watching a sword and shield, and if we see properly, we can tell that light attack at the beginning and the second will do 100% damage, while the ender of a light attack will do 105%. We have also the values for the heavy attack, but I will go for a little bit more details on them a bit later. If we look at the rapier, we have kind of the same thing. We have a light attack which begins with 100% weapon damage, and then we have a middle swipes which are 2, and they will deal 60% weapon damage. Now you might be thinking, why so low? Well, technically because it's a bit of a quicker attack. Again, we have a heavy attack damage and so on. Now, there are 2 weapons in the whole game, or at least for the moment, that don't have light or heavy attack. They have a standard attack, as it's always the same, and those are the ranged weapons musket and blunderbuss. They always attack the same way, they don't have different types of attacks, and they do the same damage regardless of what are your inputs. Now, of course, if we look at other ranged weapons, such as the bow, we can see that there is a short draw and long draw, which are technically light and heavy attacks. We can see the same pattern for the fire staff, for the life staff, and so on. When we speak about light attacks, we need to know what exactly we are gaining from them and what exactly is their downside. For example, if we are using a quicker light attack, such as the sword and shield, for example, that I showed you, or a hatchet, we can see that the attacks are relatively quick. And of course, if we have an opponent in front of us who is trying to run away, we will be able to keep on slashing on his back and we will keep on hitting him, which means that we will be keeping that distance between us, and relatively easy we will be able to follow the person. Now, if we change to a weapon that has a really slow attack, like let's say the spear, we can see that the attacks are slower, we are not really moving that much forward, but because of the range of the attack, as the spear has a higher range, as you can see, we can maybe keep the distance again relatively close, as we will be hitting on a further distance. But what will happen if we go to the rapier? Currently the rapier has the worst tracking. This always called tracking, by the way. So basically the rapier has the worst tracking, and if you start attacking like this, your target would be easy just to press W or just to start running away, and he will be able to get away. So with all that information, to summarize a little bit more, basic attacks are usually used for a quick burst of damage because they are quick, and sometimes you want to use them when your enemy is already out of stamina, meaning that he cannot really run away quick enough, or he cannot dodge away, or he cannot block. So those are the moments where you want to use your light attacks as much as possible, so you can gain the maximum amount of damage in the shortest time possible. Now, what else we can do with the light attacks is, of course, to do a combination of light attack with an ability. A perfect example could be the spear, because if we want to do an animation cancel with the abilities of the spear, we can do a light attack into perforate, for example, which will cause 4 additional attacks in total. If we want to do it at the end of our light attack chain, and for the spear this chain, as I said, is 2 attacks, like 1, 2. So if we want to do 1, 2, we can instantly start our perforate at the end, which will cause 5 attacks in a really quick succession. The same thing can be done with other weapons. For example, if we want to go again with, let's say, the sword and shield, we can do 1, 2 and then jump, or 1, 2 shield rush, or 1, 2 shield bash, and so on and so on. Basically, every weapon has its own combinations, and depending on your build, depending on what exactly you are aiming for, you can get those small combos made up in a way so you can maximize your damage and pressure over your opponents. And of course, like I said, the most important here is that if you cast the ability right after the attack is over, then the damage will be pretty much the best possible. One other example that I can give, which I currently just remembered, is for example the Pharaoh Rush of the Hatchet. As you can see, Hatchet is hitting really quickly. It has again 4 attack chain of the basic attacks, the light attacks. So if you do light attacks, you can also start your Pharaoh Rush, which will increase the attacks to a maximum number of 7, because the Pharaoh Rush does 4 attacks, and you can also do 3 attacks without the last one in the chain, because the last one, as you can see, it's a bit slower, hitting the one from the up like this. So if you want to do 1, 2, 3 and then Pharaoh Rush, it's really good. But this is again to the people that are professionals with those kind of weapons, because I'm not really a hatchet player. Now, when we speak about also combinations with light attacks, there is one other thing that we should mention, and this is mostly used for rapiers. I was using this quite a lot because of the bad tracking of the rapier. For example, if you want to keep the distance on your target, the best way to do it is to use the first attack of your chain. I don't know what is the reason for it, but the first attacks of all chains, which means that every weapon's first attack, is the best one when it comes to tracking, and it's the best when it comes to chasing targets. So if we imagine that there is a target in front of me and I really want to be on his neck, I would want to do an attack and then dodge into another attack. I would not want to spam left clicks, just because he will start run away, I will get locked into animations of my attacks, and then he would just make free distance for no reason. If you manage, however, to make an attack on him, slow him down, and already predict that he might be dodging forward, you can do an attack into dodge into another attack and follow this up on and on until you, of course, not run out of stamina. Because if you run out of stamina, if this goes to gray bar, basically you are slowed and you are moving way slower, and therefore you would lost your target. The last thing that I need to mention for the light attacks before going to the heavy ones is that the light attacks don't really have that much power when someone is blocking, meaning that if your opponent is just blocking regardless if he's using a shield or not, you should probably not hit with light attacks, but instead use an ability or use a heavy attack just to break the block. If you are continuously hitting with light attacks into a blocking target, you are basically wasting your time, and he is just laughing at you, waiting for his cooldowns, and soon probably he will punish you, so try to avoid that. Now going to the next section, that would be the heavy attacks, and here the things are getting a bit more complicated, and I will try to, of course, explain why again as quick as possible. So as we saw again here in this section of the weapon masteries, every single weapon has a different amount of heavy attack damage, and of course the different types of heavy attacks. For example, the sword and shield has a heavy attack, and then it has a charged heavy attack. So what is the difference between a normal and a charged heavy attack? If we look at the animation, we can see that there is a quick one, which is this one. This is a quick heavy, and then this is a charged heavy. The charged heavy is the one that you hold your left mouse button, or whatever the number that might be on your console, until the end, and basically the character will just perform it when it's charged to the maximum. The same can happen with all kinds of other weapons. For example, the spear also has a fully charged heavy, and then it has a short charged, or like just a regular heavy attack. So what is the difference and where do we use those things? As we can see, the difference in terms of damage is kind of big, because for example, a normal heavy would do 130% damage, but the charged one will do a 35% more, 165. The same goes for the sword, from 120 to 160. This is 40% damage. So that's like a lot. Why we should do a quick and charged heavy, quick instead of charged heavy. So, you know, like where is the catch up here, right? This is basically down to every single weapon and the different benefits that you get from them. For example, the sword and shield will have a passive which is called Empowered Stab, as you can see, and this one will give us 30% empower for 5 seconds whenever we successfully do a heavy attack. Now, it doesn't really state that it has to be a normal heavy or a charged heavy. Regardless of the heavy attack, you would get those 30% empower. So if you are close to your target and you just want to get your empower quick, you want to hit as quick as possible. You don't want to charge that much so your enemy can, have the time to think about, oh, maybe I should run away, maybe I should dodge, You don't want to give them that time. So of course, you want to perform it as quick as possible so you can get the benefits from it. If we go to another weapon, which I will show you also in a second, this is basically the hammer, and as you can see, this passive here called Hammer Time, gain empower on heavy attacks, increasing the damage by 20% for 4 seconds. So this is almost the same passive. Technically the values are a bit different, but technically, it works the same way. You do a half charged heavy, you don't need to do this low and, super visible heavy attack that everyone can dodge away from. You just quickly charge it. As you can see, the damage is relatively low, but you get the empower really quickly and you don't really care. So this is an extremely good tool to use to get the benefits from your passives dependent on your weapons. Now, of course, some weapons, like the spear for example, want to charge their heavy a little bit longer. And what is the reason for charging it a little bit longer? Well, simply because the spear has a really big reach. What I mean by this is, for example, I'm standing on 6 meters away from this dummy, right? If I charge my heavy, okay, maybe 6 is a bit too much, but if I get just a little bit closer, why does it say still 6? I think it's like around 6 meters that you have the range. I'm pretty sure I can hit probably from here as well. So if we do like this, maybe just a little bit, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the sweet spot. So from here, I'm basically able to hit the dummy. As you can see, this is a really big distance. Like that's 5 meters of distance. If I do a single dodge roll, that's like literally the same amount of distance that we have with one dodge. Meaning that if I'm next to my target and I start charging my heavy, even if he wants to get away from me, in any of the directions, I would probably be able to hit him. So this means that if this is my target and he wants to run this way, I can just charge the heavy and follow up to wherever he's going. Because after charging your heavy, you can just turn around in any of the directions you want to technically hit. So that's why with some weapons, it's really nice to use the heavy attack to completely charge status, just because you're gonna hit eventually anyone. The same goes for the greatsword. The greatsword also has like an insane amounts of tracking. Probably not gonna hit the same 5 meters, actually still hitting them. But yeah, like as you can see, like the tracking of the greatsword is like insanely powerful. And it's almost working the same way as the spear. And here the good thing about the greatsword as well is that the greatsword, when it enters this offensive stance, like I call it, or some people call it the red stance, when you have this one, you are also getting cooldown reductions. You are also getting passively like quicker heavy attacks. So you can even spam them quick enough to not be, I would say, that much penalized for using the fully charged heavy attacks. So this is one other way of performing heavy attacks and getting all the benefits from them. So in general, what we have to conclude here is that heavy attacks are not only good for getting a lot of different benefits from your skill trees, they are not only good for tracking enemies on further distance with specific weapons like the spear and the greatsword, but they are also really good for something that we have to mention, and this is to break the shields. Now, if we want to know which weapons are extremely good for shield breaking, we need to look again into our inventories and then to specifically choose a weapon that we need to know the numbers for. As you can see, every weapon has a base damage, it has a critical chance damage, then we have a multiplier of the critical damage, and then we have 2 blocking values, which we need to understand how they work. The first one is a blocking stamina damage, and then we have a blocking stability. Now, the blocking stamina damage is the amount of damage that your weapon performs after hitting someone who is blocking. For example, if somebody is blocking and I'm trying to break his block with my hatchet, would not be the same if I use my hammer. As you can see, the hammer has more than 2 times the amount of blocking stamina damage. And then if I look at the greatsword, we will see that also the amount of damage through blocks is really high. Again, double the amount of the hatchet. And the same goes for the spear, not so high but still relatively big one, and so on. And then if we look at the second value, which is the blocking stability, this is when you block with this specific weapon. As I said, the blocking is not only with shields, you can block also with your own weapons. As you can see, I'm currently blocking with the greatsword. I can do the same with the spear and so on. And these values are really important because then you can realize which weapon is really suitable for blocking. And if you get into trouble and you need to block, you can technically choose the better weapon in your own equipment to use the block. For example, if I'm using a hammer and I have, let's say, a hatchet, I would not really want to block with the hatchet because I have only 21% blocking stability, but with the hammer I have to have 27. Now you might be thinking that 6 or 7%, you know, in general, like as a number is not that much, but to be fair, this is like quite a drastic change. And you can of course go and test that with your friends. Just block, tell them to try to hit you with light attacks or abilities and see how much time it will take them to penetrate your block, so you would see for yourself. Another important thing that I need to mention, and this specifically for all of the mages out there, because as you know guys, I'm playing a mage. The mage weapons also can block. They have a relatively weak blocking potential. Fire Staff has only 17% blocking stability, and the Ice Gauntlet has 30, which is insanely good, and that's why I wanted to mention this. If you are getting into trouble and you are playing a Fire Mage with an Ice Gauntlet, you don't want to block with your Fire Staff. You want to quickly change to your Ice Gauntlet and start blocking. Now, one other really specific and really important note here is that some weapons have also extra blocking potential. For example, this passive, which is called Blocking Stamina, from the Ice Gauntlet skill tree, you can see for yourself, blocking an attack with the Ice Gauntlet will convert mana to stamina, converting 5 mana to 10 stamina. So what does this mean? It means that when I'm blocking, usually when you are getting hit, you lose your stamina. So eventually, if you are blocking for too long or the enemy is hitting you with heavy attacks, this stamina will go down to 0 if you not stop, and therefore at this time when you lose all your stamina, you cannot block anymore, you cannot dodge anymore, and you are a sitting duck and most likely will get killed. So if we continuously block with the Ice Gauntlet, our mana will save us a little bit at least, because it will transfer our mana into stamina, which means that we will be able to block for a longer period of time. Now, one thing here that is not really specified, but I have to mention it for you, this is only when you are getting hit by light attacks. If somebody is hitting you with a heavy attack, this conversion would not really happen. So you would not lose, for example, 50 mana to cover up for the stamina loss from a heavy attack. So be careful about it. I mostly use this blocking when it's like against people that are using hatchets or swords and things like this, simply because they don't have that much of a penetration to the armor. But yeah, that's on the next step that we have to speak about the block. So what we still have to say about the heavy attacks, because I didn't really mention it, just to go back quickly. Heavy attacks, we already knew what they are good for because of breaking the block on the enemy, or because of the high amounts of damage and the different bonuses. And one other thing that they are really good for is the tracking. Now, unfortunately, I don't really have a friend here to test with me. Maybe this guy can test it, but we are not really in a call. But just to give you guys a summary of it, and maybe I will try to also get some footage for it. If you use a weapon with a really good tracking, and I'm currently holding the hammer just because of that purpose, if you do those half heavies, the tracking of the hammer is extremely powerful and good. Which means that if my target is sitting around there and I just charge a half heavy on him, it would literally make my character move forward. Now, to give you another view of that, look at where my feet are when I'm charging the heavy of the spear, just to give you the example. So my feet are literally in the middle of this path. And if I do a heavy, my feet are now a little bit forward, you see? If I do it again, I would move again forward. And basically this is happening with the full charged heavy. Now imagine that you are just doing a half heavy and you are moving with the same amounts of steps. For example, from here to here with this like short heavy charge. This is an extremely good mechanic and it's really hard to learn, but once you master this, you would get the feeling for it and it's really insane. So once you get the feeling for this, you can bait your enemies extremely hard. You can also make them dodge for no reason, because if they see a hammer going like this, they would have to respect it. And if they don't respect it, you would just bonk them in the head. You would get 20% in power and the next bonk will only hurt more and more. And then if they just decide to dodge, you can also like follow up with dodge and then do the same thing. Eventually they would run out of stamina, or they will be really low on stamina, and they would have to trade blows with you. So then it's about who has the bigger bonk, right? Alright, so that's all about the heavy attacks. Now let's move to the next section, which is the block, as we already touched upon it a bit. But I will try to explain a little bit further. So again, to say it again to everyone, basically every single weapon in the game can block, with the exception of blunderbuss, musket and bow. Those are the three weapons that cannot block in the game, and there is one really specific exception for the hatchet. If you slot this passive here, sorry, where is it? This one, replace the aim throw. Basically, your hatchet is becoming, instead of blocking, when you click your right mouse button, it would start to aim to throw hatchets. So if you have these passives and you want to throw hatchets, you would not be able to block with the hatchet. But if you don't have it, you would be able to block with it. So those are the weapons that cannot block. And then of course, everything else can block in the game. Again, if you just hover over the item, it doesn't matter if the item is legendary, purple, green, 100 or 700 gear score, it will always show the same stats because they are flat stats for this type of weapon. So if you want to look at the block stability to see how strong the block is of a certain weapon, that's the best way to do it. And then of course you can go and check for yourself with your friends how much damage you're gonna get in the form of stamina when you are blocking his attacks and so on. Now another thing that I have to mention here, because it was an addition from probably a couple of months now, maybe close to a year, I'm not entirely sure. Previously it was not possible to block ranged attacks with anything else than a shield. So the shields were the only blockers, let's say, from ranged attacks. While lately they changed that, and if someone is shooting at me with a bow or a fire staff or a musket or whatever, you can still block. Now of course you will receive damage, you would not block the 100% of that attack, but you would get like really reduced damage and the numbers would not be that high at all. One example that comes on top of my mind right now for blocking a ranged attacks from an enemy is, imagine that you have a musket player on the other side who is playing with traps and you basically got caught in a trap. Now when this happens, you will be basically rooted for 3 seconds. I'm just trying, yeah, there it is. So if you get into the trap, you're gonna be rooted and immobilized by the trap for 3 seconds. And what most people tend to do instinctively is just start dodging on the same spot for no reason, trying to evade bullets and everything. But by doing this, you are just making yourself even worse, simply because you're gonna lose all your stamina. And once that happens, you cannot run away, you are still rooted, you cannot dodge, you cannot block, and then simply you're gonna eat all of the shots of the musket. Now, the most rational thing to do here is just to remember which of your two weapons is better for blocking. Pick the one that is better and then just start blocking. Yes, you're gonna still get some damage, but the amount of damage that you're gonna get and the amount of stamina that you're gonna lose compared to technically getting killed is not even close to be matched. So that's why just use the blocking rationally and try to use it in your advantage instead of your disadvantage. Another really important thing that I can give you again as an example, this shockwave ability of the hammer, like probably everyone knows that this is stunning you. And then if you get stunned and if the person has sundering stacks on his hammer, you would get also rend. It's really not ideal because then it's coming a full charged heavy in your head and it really hurts, right? So one thing you can also test with your friends, tell your friend to start a shockwave animation while you are just holding a block on the side. Don't dodge, don't do anything, just hold the block and see how much stamina you're gonna lose. You would not get stunned, you would not get rended, you would not get damage, you will just block the whole thing from the shockwave, and probably you're gonna lose around 15 to 20 stamina at best. I'm not entirely sure how much is it, but it's definitely a really low number. And then of course, last but not least, there are some additional bonuses for the blocking classes for the Sword and Shield and for the Flail and Shield. For example, if you block with the Sword and Shield and you have this passive called Counter Attack, you would also get Empower stacks, and if you have this one, you would technically get Fortify. Of course, there is some other perks on the shields themselves, such as Counter Attack and some others which I don't really know by heart, but as you can imagine, you know, those things are pretty handy and they also give you different types of bonuses. Of course, having a medium shield or a heavy shield like Tower and Kite Shield, of course, respectively with the correct names, those will also have even higher protection from blocking and of course other bonuses, but I mean, this is quite normal and you probably know that already without me saying it. Alright, so that's basically the most important and basic and valuable things that you should learn about light, heavy attacks, and of course blocking. There is quite a lot more things that have to be discussed, but it's a bit more in specific when we speak about potential builds and of course different weapons, because like I said, every different weapon works in a little bit different way. There is like a different value for using those different attacks. So it's not as easy and as simple to just say, oh, just use heavy attacks for destroying blocks and then just use light attacks for doing extra damage and stuff. There is a lot more to it. Now, to get to the most interesting part for myself at least, is to give you guys some different tips of how to maximize your combos and how to maximize your damage potential, also to increase your reach of hits and things like this. So earlier I've mentioned a bit with the spear when I said that you can do like a light attack into a specific ability. So for example, you are chasing someone, you do light attack, you dodge, light attack, and then insta perforate, or you can do like light attack, dodge, light attack, and then skewer, and so on and so on. Like the combinations could be many. Of course, you don't want to do light attack into cyclone because the cyclone will kind of root you in place while your target is trying to run away. So that's not really ideal. You want to use the cyclone when you're trading, but that's, you know, that's for the spear professionals, right? So one thing I want to show you specifically with the spear is previously we saw that the reach of the heavy attack is around 5 meters, right? But now we're gonna test how much is the reach of our skewer ability. So if I stay here on this small bush and I'm aiming to hit this dummy there, I can use skewer and I can see that I'm hitting it without any problem. Now I will try to do the same thing, of course, by increasing the range slowly and with just a little bit. So now I am just behind the bush. So let's see if I hit it. I still hit it, which is nice. And now we're gonna try again by going even further just to see if we can hit the dummy from here. As you can see, this is already quite a big distance. Like this is 9 meters of distance. So if I use it, I still hit, but it felt that it's just on the edge. Like probably if I try to do it the second time, it would not work. So let's extend just a little bit more. So now we are basically on maybe close to 10 meters. So from here to the dummy is quite a lot. And as you can see, I'm not reaching it. It was really close, but not reaching it, right? So now what we can do in order to make that big of a distance to be closed down and we can hit the dummy. As you can see, I'm so far away, that's 10 meters away from the dummy. Now, instead of just going for insta skewer, what we can do here is start charging a heavy attack. Now the reason for this is because when you charge your heavy attack, like I told you earlier, at the second part of it you are moving forward. And as you can see, after the heavy, I was moved forward up to the small bush, right? Now the interesting part here is that you don't need to wait for the full animation of the heavy to be over, like here, the recovery, the full recovery. But instead you can technically charge your skewer at the perfect timing and then just do like this. Now of course I didn't do it properly and that's why I didn't hit. But if you do it in the correct way, let me just lower my cooldowns a bit. So if we go here, we stay like this again, like so far back. So we charge our heavy and then we jump with the skewer. So this thing can give you so much more extra distance on your opponents. And the best thing about it is that many people don't expect you to fly over from such a distance. Even experienced players would not expect a spear guy from 10 meters away to fly like a Hercules or a Superman, you know, like from there to here on you with skewer. Like this is a really big distance. And for them to react that quickly it's not easy as well. So if you do it like this, you know, and you get the feeling for it, because this is the most important part, you need to get the feeling for those combinations, you would see how much more potential of threat you can oppose to your enemies, and it's really useful in all kinds of PvP activities. Now the same thing goes, for example, for Sword and Shield. Now this is a bit more common and probably you've seen by yourself, just waiting to get outside of this combat with the dummy. But for example, for Sword and Shields, I think that the example that I will give you would be really something to remember. Many times you see a Sword and Shield guy approaching you and then he's charging a heavy before jumping, right? So this is exactly the same reason. Because when you charge a heavy, like I'm standing here on this small bush, when you charge a heavy, after this, even short heavy, it doesn't need to be like fully charged one like this one. It can be like a really short one. I did this way too short, but this is a short heavy. Look at the distance. Like this is just a couple of meters, like 1 to 2 meters, but still this gives you the extra edge. So if he does this and then jump instantly after the small animation, he technically gets 2 to 3 meters extra, and with those 2 to 3 meters he can reach you super easily. The same thing can be done with Shield Rush. So for example, if he does only Shield Rush, he would get into here, but now I don't have, of course, cooldowns. I think I have like refreshing move on my shield, so I will just try to get it quickly. And this is also a good thing to use your light attacks. So if you technically do the same thing, let's say that your target is a bit closer, you can do this and then Shield Rush into it. Of course, again, with practice, with repetition, you would get it perfectly, because the animations are kind of getting matched and mixed into each other, and you get the whole benefit out of it. There is like a lot of other combinations that I can show you, or at least the ones that I know. I'm pretty sure that there are probably many that I don't know for myself, because I'm not that good with all types of weapons. I mainly play Fire Staff, and that's why I'm gonna show you one with the Fire Staff. So what we want to do, I mean, here there is nothing to gain in terms of distance, but there is a really nice combo that I can show you, which will benefit you in the form of damage. So for example, if you go for a heavy attack, you can see that, you know, you kind of have like a recovery. If we are looking only at the staff, we're gonna see that the Fire Staff goes forward and then the character brings it back. So if we want to maximize our damage potential, we need to be quick. And for ranged weapons, the animation cancel is not with abilities only, but also with dodges. The good thing about range is that you can kind of dodge in one place and still, you know, keep on damaging, while with melee you need to save your dodges for chasing or running away from your opponent. So if I want to cancel my abilities or attacks, there is like one way of doing it with dodges. So if I want to make the maximum damage possible, I can do a heavy into a dodge into another heavy, right? Extremely quickly. Simply because when you are doing the dodge, you are already charging your heavy. As you can see, like this is also like a dodge sideways. I don't know why I'm going backwards, but like this is a dodge sideways. And now if I wait for my stamina and I dodge and start a heavy attack, you can see that I'm already charging it from halfway through. I don't even finish the whole dodge. So you basically start dodging, but because you press your heavy attack, you are already charging it middle way through. And this is what speeds up the process when it comes to damage. Another good way of doing an extra damage to kind of put even more into this combo is like doing a heavy attack into an ability and then light attack. Why? Well, technically it works the same way. If you do a heavy attack into an ability, it kind of cancels out the recovery process. You don't need to recover from the heavy attack, so you instantly use an ability and then a light attack because it's the quickest thing to happen. So you can do a heavy attack into pillar, into light attack, and this is basically 3 hits in a span of less than a second. I mean, the damage kind of comes in less than a second, and the enemy would be, you know, blasted from so much damage, he would think that you are probably cheating or stuff. And as I said in the very start, guys, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. I'm trying to keep it as quick as possible. Like I said, probably I'm missing a lot of things, but it's really hard to give you all of the different information and details just quickly summarized like this. It's hard, but I'm just giving my best. So if you have any questions, or you know, you don't really understand something, or you saw something happening but you didn't really realize like how exactly does it work, please ask me and I will gladly try to explain it or to give you more insights on how those things work and why they are like so used and so important. And just before saying bye and thank you for watching, like always, I just want to show you one last different like trick that is extremely important, especially for melee weapons. And this is of course the trick with like baiting your opponent and then instantly blocking. Now what I'm talking about is, for example, imagine that on the other side there is a person who is playing with, let's say, greatsword or spear, right? And I am playing with sword and shield. If I'm blocking and we want to fight, we don't want to run away, he doesn't want to run away, we just want to fight until someone of us dies. If I'm blocking and he starts a heavy attack to be charged at me so he can destroy my block, I have a couple of options to choose from. The first one is to remain with the block and then lose a lot of my stamina just because I will get hit by it. The second one is to dodge and lose 50 stamina, because this is how much one dodge costs. And then the third one, which is usually the best option, is when you have a different stagger ability out of cooldown, to use this stagger ability while he's performing his charged attack. Now what I mean by this is, while he's doing this, you can technically hit him with a stagger ability. As you can see, I don't have grit, and therefore I will get staggered, my charged heavy attack will be cancelled, and I will be the one receiving the hit, simply because I was exposed and I was vulnerable, you know? Now the thing is, if I'm the spear guy and I'm expecting already this to happen, as you can see, this is already going like a chess game where you kind of predict one move forward. If I'm like charging my heavy attack and I'm expecting that the other guy would use, let's say, a stagger ability or something just to stop me and to hit me, I can start charging it and instantly block. Like every heavy attack in this game of all different weapons can be stopped by either a dodge or a block. Like if you dodge, it has to be kind of quick. I mean, you cannot like already pass halfway the attack and then stop it. As you can see, the last one that I tried, it didn't work. But with a block, you can kind of stop it almost at all times. I will try to like go even further, and as you can see, I'm still able to block, you know? Like it's almost at the end. Now here it's already a hit, but like with a block, you can always stop your attack. So if you predict that your opponent would try to be sneaky, hitting you while you are charging your heavy attack, this is a really, really good way to punish him and to, of course, block his attack. Because, like I told you, for example, if he does, let's say, jump or shield rush or shield bash, those abilities, they don't do heavy stamina damage, which means that if you manage to stop your heavy and start blocking, he would probably take 10 to 15 stamina of you, which is technically nothing. He wasted a full ability, and now you have the opportunity to start doing the same thing again. And now he has to choose again, am I going for a second round, or this guy is baiting me again? So that's it, guys. I hope that those tips are, you know, at least to some extent helpful to you. I really wish that you can understand what I'm talking about, even though I'm trying to explain it really simple and, of course, methodical. But again, if there is something that you don't understand, if there is something that you clearly see that it's powerful, but you don't really understand how it works and why it works like this, please hit me up in the comments, join the Discord, ask me there, or the best case scenario, join the stream whenever I'm online and ask me live, and I will try to explain it live and to give you also different examples for it. And I think that this way you're gonna learn way more. So yeah, that's the best way to do it. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys on the next one.